Hello guys, I wanted to talk with you today about Florida's Don't Say Gay bill and how it and Ron DeSantis's kind of culture war with Disney and the left has kind of stirred and created about a dozen or more similar cases that are being proposed across the country in about a dozen or so states. So it started with Florida and their parental rights and education bill, and it's spread from Florida to Alabama, Ohio, Louisiana, Texas, and several more at least. So what are we seeing here? Are we seeing, is this going to be a particularly popular stance amongst Republicans that is going to are they leaning into this particularly as something that's going to carry them through the midterms and give them a lot of success? Because I honestly see this issue as pretty inconsequential, and honestly I don't know if it's worth the full effort and energy of the GOP, especially when there are so many more populist ideas and messages to get out there. There are labor movements going on throughout the country. There are economic issues, many that you can pin on a clear enemy in China, and you know there's plenty of populist messaging that that will do much better to carry the Republicans through, but they're choosing to pin their efforts on this Don't Say Gay bill, which I think is kind of silly and kind of authoritarian to an extent. I do think that the state has some reason to influence what is taught in education for their kids. Of course, you know they want to education is a form of indoctrination. You know, it's raising a future society towards the values that support the sovereignty and longevity of a nation. So it makes sense. There's always what I'm saying is there's always going to be a social agenda in education. It's one more form of messaging, and every form of messaging contains an agenda. I mean, there's no neutral message. There's nothing that doesn't. All forms of education is going to be subject to bias. That's a given. So, I personally think that this issue with parents not wanting their kids to learn about gay, LGBT issues and identity, if they don't want their kids being taught that in the early grades, the grades where they're already not being taught about sexual education and reproduction, I see no problem with that. I think it makes sense to tie the age. I mean, it would make sense to tie those ages together. When you're at the age where you're learning about sex ed, you should learn about. I mean, if you're learning about heterosexual sex, you should learn about homosexual sex. I mean, it makes sense to learn about both at that time. I don't see what the big deal is with tying those ages together and making some. I mean, I think parents. I guess I see both sides of this. I think parents have a right to some extent of what their kids are taught, but then I also think that as a society we have to open our kids up to this information eventually, and I don't think that the age requirements are unrealistic, but I guess you have to look at the context of where this bill is coming from and who's become its biggest spokesman. And that would be Florida and Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis has already proven to have an authoritarian streak, I believe. I've seen his handling of COVID, his handling of mask wearing, his handling of a handful of issues over the recent years. I see through him. I don't see him as he's certainly no populist. He's no friend of the working man. Not to say that any Republican has been, but at least Donald Trump pretended to be, and at least even if Trump didn't actually accomplish his populist agenda, or even betrayed his populist agenda, him being in the White House represents a shift towards populism in this country, a rejection of corporate ran politics and the conventional establishment way of doing things in Washington. That's what Donald Trump represents, even if he fails on every message and campaign promise he's ever made. Him just being there is a message to the elites. So I understand why Trump would be there, and I see why him being there makes... The point is that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, coming from this whole trend coming from Ron DeSantis, it gives me the feeling that it makes sense why this would come from him. And although I don't see, I don't understand. I'm perplexed by why this is, why he thinks that this is an issue that's going to gain a lot of traction. But it has to some extent. I don't know if this is going to be the issue that is going to unite the working class and bring success to the Republicans long term. I don't think that this is a winning issue long term. I think that economic issues are going to be better for them. But anyway, so I guess I'm struggling to find how to tie this to media necessarily, but it's clear that, once again, needless to say, that this issue has become divided on media and even perpetuated by media. It just says it's an issue that divides the country to some extent. It's, of course, that flame is that culture war is perpetuated by the media. But anyway, I just wanted to express that there's a series of states that are pushing for similar legislation, same as the state of Florida. And I guess the best way to tie this to media is that as a form of communication, education is one of those institutions of indoctrination that go much further than what the media can even hope for, because we're talking about state authorized indoctrination in a form of education. That's what education is teaching teaching the social, it's the social agenda of the state. Simple as that. But of course, education is necessary. But it's important to think about when children should learn about these kind of things. And it's seeming like this parental rights and education bill is a growing concern that is going to continue to divide not just the country, but even Republicans themselves. So, anyway, thank you for your time, guys.